Welcome to Ohioans Against Extremism podcast.
Oh my God, that was beautiful.
I've been training for that my whole life.
Okay, well, we are back. It's been a minute, but we are back today with some interesting conversations to be had. We're going to hear actually from my cousin Nick. I know, a lot of the folks who bothered to listen to this show also read our blog. You all might have seen the article that I put out about my Uncle Ted who recently passed. Nick is my Uncle Ted's son. He also happens to be someone whose therapy niche, he is a therapist, and his niche has become Cleveland area white dudes. And so we are going to talk to him and kind of dissect what he's learned from that and hope to, I don't know, what kind of conversation are we aiming for, Ainsley?
I'm just taking notes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm excited for what it is that he has to share with us, and I'm just sitting here taking notes, hoping to find some solutions for this clusterfuck that we're in.
Yeah.
Can I say clusterfuck?
Absolutely, you can say clusterfuck.
Speaking of bills.
For now, you can say it.
Okay, all right, cool.
No, yeah, and I think, the goal is not to either ream out white guys or to justify bad behavior. It really is to dissect some of the, bigger trends and patterns and new technology and how that works into existing biases and have a productive conversation about it rather than just a blame game conversation, I think is maybe the headline there.
Well, the white guys do have some valid points.
Listen, everyone's life has gotten more expensive, no matter their race. That's just straight up true. So, there's a lot of things.
That's what I'm looking most forward to, is pulling those things out. Because I think you're exactly right. We, not just us, but just mass media, social media has done a really intense job of separating the white guys from everyone else.
Yeah.
And so I am just interested to hear how white guys are more like me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what we're going to find is a lot of the things that are facing white guys are very similar to all the things facing the rest of us. They just maybe look a little different.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Maybe it's a different color, So today we're going to cover a topic that I've been meaning to cover, honestly, since we founded this organization, but I didn't really know how to talk about it in a way that felt both empathetic and useful. And so today we are going to tackle the topic of white dudes. I mean, guys, toxic masculinity, whiteness, all of these things are going to be baked in, but just the general, what is going on in this world? And so naturally the first question is, who the hell do I get to talk to about this with us?
I'm not a white dude.
We are not white men.
Not a white dude.
So I actually, a lot of you all read my essay about my Uncle Ted, and he was one of my favorite people in the world. And his son is here. Sorry, I didn't expect to actually tear up during that part. But you guys all know him, but Nick has incredible judgment and has really carried the torch in terms of just towing that line of being a good influence and a good male role model, and also not letting people get away with anything and holding people's feet to the fire. So
he's a good white guy.
He's a good white guy. He's one of the good ones,
Hey, love the good ones.
So I thought, Nick actually came to visit over winter break, and we just got to kind of shooting the shit about this. And I know we always say that this podcast is like the group chat, and in that spirit, we had a really good conversation about some of the kind of external factors that are just exist in the world that are kind of making some of our divisions what they are. So I invited my therapist cousin Nick, who I have known my entire life, to come talk to us about white guys. So without further ado, Nick Chmura.
Well, super pleasure to be invited on. Like Maria was saying, my name is Nick Chmura. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor from the state of Ohio. I trained also in Gestalt therapy and in EMDR, which is an approach that focuses a lot on trauma, and learning several other modalities. I think a lot of my answers today will sound a little bit like utopic, or also so small that you would wonder how that could actually do something. But I don't really have a lot of other ideas besides those polarities. And also, I'm not a behavioral scientist. I'm somebody that's been a therapist for 7 years. I see mostly men. And so I've spent thousands of hours in clinical therapy with men. And so that's kind of where my expertise, if you can call it that, would come from.
We can call it that, and we will call it
Absolutely. You spent thousands of hours with white guys?
that. It's not among us.
I don't have that experience. Well, not lately, but anyway.
On that note, let's dive right in.
Yes.
So, we're grappling with some big existential questions here, and I think one of the things that I really want to make sure we get to, so maybe we just start with, are some of the bigger patterns. I think that when we're talking about, the danger of political extremism, when we are talking about radicalization from online stuff or whatever it might be coming from, it's kind of important to trace our math back and how did we get to the point where these conditions are worsening over time. So Nick, one of the things that when we talked earlier, I found very interesting were some of the patterns that you mentioned around some of the external factors that are like common among men that seem to be a little bit more disaffected, whether that is their dating experience or their familial structure. There certainly seem to be some commonalities that were worth highlighting. Can you talk a little bit about that just to get us started?
Three of the biggest things that come to mind when I hear you say that are social media, isolation, and the patriarchy, and some kind of intersection of those. It's no secret that like social media is manipulated, and people think it's. I hope they don't, but they behave in it like it's a real society, a real like interaction. When it's manipulated to make people feel worse and more alone. That's what the companies figured out could make them the most money, is if people are feeling alone. So they didn't do it for social good, they did it to manipulate people. Mm-hmm. That's why you see countries like France making it illegal to advertise things like Botox and plastic surgery on Instagram. And Australia is limiting access to people under 16 to social media because they're aware of like the negative impacts of it. And then, I think like social media threw gas on like a fire that was already lit. Like patriarchy has been going on like since the beginning, and white men were tricked into it just kind of like everyone was. The difference is that they have like the benefit from it. They're on like the benefiting side. But, dominating people doesn't enrich you. And that's why you feel in a sustainable way. And that's why you see people in power seeking more power and more richness. Like it never ends. You don't see like a really happy, really rich, powerful person. Like they're always looking for more of it, or maybe they're happy, but they're never like content. So like, I think we're already off on a little bit.
No, that's okay. I think that's good. You said content. Can you describe what you mean when you say they're not content? Because I think that's actually a really important concept.
Look at the rich, powerful white men that take up a lot of our media time right now, and like, do they smile? I guess. Do you see them with their families? Do you see them like, you don't look younger after being a U.S. president? Like you gain like a ton more age after, and the stress of that, and can you bring me back to the question or share a little more?
Just about the concept of contentment. I think there's this idea that you get more money and power and you're going to be happier. And I just feel like everything we see does not actually result in that.
Well, it's also just a function of, how consumerism is pushed on us, right? Like there's always the quest for more. And if there's always a desire for more, it doesn't matter how much you have, there's always more to have. And that, it's kind of baked into the American dream. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to get $100 million, and then I'm gonna call it quits. That's just not how this game is set up, and I think that not having an endpoint, one, is part of the psychology of it, right? But also is what I think really drives that lack of contentment, because you can always have more. No matter where you're at in life, you can always have more.
So is that a theme that comes up a lot in your conversations, Nick?
I think that there are a lot of my clients that aren't making what they thought that they were supposed to. They look at their contemporaries and think they don't have as powerful of jobs. I have a lot of clients that went to like the most prestigious private schools in Ohio, and their dads were titans of industry or some shit like that, and now they're struggling in their jobs, and it seemed like it was going to be a fairy tale, and they're not really understanding why, like, it's not. And
that was my next question.
I also think like America's gotten a lot more expensive too. Like, while you are making less or making the same, things have gotten more expensive, and you can't like quite have that quality of life that our parents could have had as easily.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to check in with the black woman in this conversation, who gets none of the benefits of the whiteness or the patriarchy. So, let's be honest, like, how are you feeling about hearing about some of this?
Well, it's interesting because having also attended some of the most noted education institutions in Ohio, I can tell you that being in class with those guys, I see why it didn't work out. I get that, dad has a golf buddy that's supposed to get you the internship, and that's supposed to be the path. But also, we're in class and you're doing Fight Club over there in AP Chemistry. I'll even kind of throw my own personal experience into this even more, like, especially when we start talking about the feelings around DEI. So this is a true story. I promise it's not fabricated for the moment.
I would never accuse.
So for undergrad, I went to Ohio State. I was admitted into Fisher upon admission to the university. I was a National Merit Scholar, a National Honor Scholar, varsity letter in sports. I had a letter of commendation from the city on my volunteerism. I worked a job. I did stuff in the community, all these things, right? So when we are all kind of discussing in our little AP group, AP honors group, like where we're going to school, and I had mentioned that I had got accepted to Ohio State and that's where I was going. There was a young man who, we, for all intents and purposes, were friends. We were definitely classmates. We had a relatively good relationship. And he literally looked at me in my eyes and he said, do you think that being black had anything to do with you getting into Ohio State? Because he himself did not get in. Now, we were sitting in the same classes, but also I see your study habits and I know you don't do anything after school. But it was just that level of entitlement. And I had to say, I was recruited by the Office of Minority Affairs. So I'm sure that was a box that was checked. However, and then I ran down all the other things that I had to do and had to be to even be pulled into that spot. And even in that conversation, I could tell that he just wasn't satisfied with that answer. And I think that I get it. I get having an expectation of how life is supposed to turn out. Right? You follow a specific path, there's a specific outcome. But the rest of us have never enjoyed, that kind of certainty. And it's like, I'm sorry that, that's what you're experiencing or what is being experienced, but also like who I have to be to sit in this room and who you had to be to sit in this room. If we want to talk about merit, yes, they might have come looking for me because my skin was brown, but also every other metric of mine far exceeded yours, right? Because I knew I had to earn it. And I think that, and of course, this is where I'm going to defer to you because, again, I don't know white guys. But
that's why we're here.
But the idea of the difference between just something that is supposed to, float your way by happenstance or just like the general path of things and something that you literally have to go out and get, that you have to go out and earn. I think that because there are so many of us that didn't have the privilege of having the path laid out and we had to go out and get it, it left the people that weren't using that same tactic behind. And it's valid, you know, like if you look at the state of things today, I see where white men feel a lack of representation. I also have walked lockstep with these white men and saw how they did not earn the right to be there. But I would love to hear your thoughts and what you gleaned in your sessions.
Yeah, I think like there was something in what you said that I was pulled towards talking about, and I also want to make sure to talk a bit about like solution ideas today too, and not like just
absolutely
rake people that I'm like rake myself and people that look like me over the coals.
I like white guys. There's a lot of white guys that I like.
Plenty of white man friends, but yes.
So my first best friend was a white guy.
Listen, my family's full
but anyway,
of white guys.
we're getting off the rails. I'm listening. I'm sorry.
I wasn't saying that was what you were doing. I wanted to also like give some like a couple solution ideas I had. So comments like the one that you said about, do you think that was because you're black or whatever that you got in? I grew up in Oberlin on the west side. That was like Oberlin. It was like a really progressive town, and then it was kind of, I didn't realize how much it was like a Pleasantville, like utopic kind of place where like black people and white people lived together in a degree of congeniality. I'm realizing now my hometown is more segregated than I realized, but we went to school together, but like geographically where people live is more segregated than I knew as a young person. And then I went to Cleveland State for my master's, and it's very racially charged. And so I was exposed to some of those comments like you were saying more, and or even making them myself without my awareness. And so I was a part of a white affinity group for the first time a couple years ago, and working in group on race with facilitators that have a curriculum to help people work through racial bias, I think is like a helpful solution. It's not really something that's done very much. At the Gestalt Institute, where I have trained and I'm a faculty member, I facilitated a white affinity group there where like 15 of us faculty member that were white met to talk about race and where our biases are, so that people that weren't white wouldn't be affected by us needing to do our work. And I think that also works well with men working together in men's groups, doing men's work together, so that women aren't affected as they're, stumbling along the path to figuring this stuff out. And then I think it's also good to work in multi racial and ethnicity groups as well. But like, I didn't believe in the white affinity group thing until I was in one, because it goes against my intuition that like us white people just being together talked about race would work. But so much came up in that time, and we didn't affect people of color like stumbling over saying stupid shit like that guy said to you.
I've always wondered what happens in those groups. The white affinity groups.
Yeah. I know, you said white affinity group, and I was like, where's this going?
Well, I know
but it was going a great spot.
I know that it's a thing, and I know that it's a part of, the
White caucus hurts my
caucus.
ears, even though I understand the concept.
Don't get me started on the racial caucuses. But thank you for that, because even as we split up in various settings in these ways, I have always wondered, what are the white people talking about? Like, what is happening over there? So thank you for that.
And I feel the same way about men, I think. But that is the problem, right? Is that, like, we are literally not part of the conversation that needs to be going a different way. So it's like, it's very helpless feeling, because it's like, what the hell do you want me to do about fixing men? What the hell do we want you to do about fixing white people? Like, not my problem, And it is our problem, because then they go around and do violent things or, like, cause harm.
Or even beyond, like, the intentional harm and violence, right? Just because of, again, the patriarchy and how long it has reigned. The people that are in positions of power are mostly white guys. And
Yeah.
Fill in the blank.
Well, I also think that like the thing is the type of white man that we seem to be rewarding in pop culture is not the Nick Chimuras of the world.
No,
like
which we should.
Which we should. I mean, you're great, Nick. But I mean, like, I would love for that white caucus or that men's caucus to result in better outcomes. And I worry it often can lead to the opposite of more extreme thinking because there's a lot of like-mindedness in the room.
Well, he's got some solutions.
I know. Let's keep hearing about it. I know. I want to hear more.
Yeah.
So tell us more about Nick. Nick, how is that not where that goes? Like, how do you prevent that?
People, I mean, facilitators who lead those groups, like, I don't really want to be someone here promoting like white affinity groups because I think I was in the same place but I am going to, but I was in the same place as where like everyone is where they hear it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
Sounds like a rally.
Or like men's groups that doesn't sound good. They're just getting together. But my experience being both in men's groups, facilitating men's groups, and being a part of white affinity groups and facilitating white affinity groups is like, it's better to work in group and not burden the minority or non-white men populations with them figuring out their work. Like, and then after some work is done in group, we get together to work on that after that group is kind of ready to. Mm-hmm. It's not what I would like, but it just seems to work better. Yeah. And it's something besides what we've been doing that hasn't really been working.
So Nick, who has spent a lot of time having very intimate conversations with white guys about the state of things, especially in Ohio, and this may be a tall ask, right? But I would like a cheat sheet on like what should I know about, just generally the population. How should I engage? What would be helpful? Because it's one of those things where it's like...
Do you mean like specifically disenchanted white men or just white men as like a generalized species?
The angry ones that are doing this.
The angry ones that are doing this,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, specifically the angry ones that are doing this.
The more extreme, more radical, more already down the rabbit hole people.
And as we're having these conversations, how we talked about understanding how they got there, it's like, I get that. I'm not disputing that. I would like to start at that point from a place of understanding and how can I be helpful or at least not harmful.
So that was kind of the question we were getting at before. Like, how do women who are probably not the people that are going to break through, let alone black women, like, how can we be most useful but also protect ourselves at the same time?
Or is it shadow work?
I'll ask.
Real quick, could you solve gender dynamics for us?
So you mentioned the point about you kind of understand how they got there.
Yeah.
And so I am going to hold off my thinking about that and just kind of get into it a little bit more.
Please.
Have you seen the show The Last of Us with Pedro Pascal? It's like a post-apocalyptic thing.
No, I haven't.
Zombies and stuff.
Oh, no, definitely not.
It's based off of a video game, but Pedro Pascal's in it. He's the male lead, and his girlfriend dies, and right before she dies, she's a part of a resistance group called the Fireflies, I believe, and she says, save who you can, kind of thing. So that's where I think the low-hanging fruit is in this problem, is going after white men that you do feel are receptive to this work and you do feel safe doing this work with, and then they can work in group to try to have an impact on the ones that are harder to reach. Mm-hmm. I also think it probably feels safer and easier for women and non-white men to work with people that are lower hanging fruit than trying to go after
Huffman.
some of the more bullish people in this category.
Yeah.
Even for me though, it's like it's hard for me to want to go after those people because it's like ugly, gritty, hard work. Like a lot of our leaders are narcissists that are really bullish and push themselves to the top, and they win because they keep coming up against people that let them be pushed over. And so how does that sound as a start of like an around the corner way of getting there a little bit?
So I also just want to add a little context around the phrasing of, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but also we have some hate viewers that just look for reasons to nitpick. So the idea of going after these people is really just our way of saying, how do we engage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Because I don't want to end up on Reddit and be like, see, they're coming, they're coming for us.
Yeah.
Because it will.
But I think we mean to sort of get people back from that edge, right? To just get people back, like, socialized. Like, Nick, one thing I was going to ask you about that you mentioned at the beginning but didn't dive into too much was that isolation was one of the factors that you had outlined. So, like, what do you mean by that, and how do we bridge that? Like, how do we start re-socializing people that need re-socialized?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the questions you sent me too was about like parenting of white men and like how that impacts it all too. So I don't know quite as well how it is in other male communities besides white male communities, but a lot of white men don't really have a lot of friends that they spend time with, like adult white men don't really, and I don't know how that is in other racial communities, and it's really foreign to me because I play sports, so 2 or 3 times a week I see like a lot of my buddies and we catch up or grab a coffee or do some other things. So I don't really have that experience, but you just don't get anyone to talk to. You see people's highlight reels on social media. You don't hear about their problems. We kind of get back to the social media thing. One thing we had talked about, Maria, was you were talking about like some in-person meetups without like technology. I don't know if that's something I'm still working on. But I think it's a great analog idea. Low, no digital.
So do you think like just the general premise of put your phone down more is a fair one for like most people? Like I feel like that's one of the things.
I think like, again, low-hanging fruit, things that someone could do right when they got off this call that would make anyone's life better would be to put your phone down. If you're on it for more than 2-3 hours a day, I think it's ridiculous. And sorry if that hits hard for people, but
hit me.
And there's a book by Anna Lemke. She's a psychiatrist who I believe is at Stanford, called Dopamine Nation, and she recommends a 30-day removal from whatever your substance or process of addiction, whatever thing you're addicted to. So try deleting social media for 30 days and see what impacts it has on you. Try to be on your phone for 2 hours or less. Try to take a break from alcohol for 30 days and like see what impact that has on you. And it at least gives you more information for you to make decisions about how you want to live your life. You might go back to it, but you will never forget that, period. Any client of mine that goes off Instagram has a better life. And anybody who tells me otherwise and can prove it, I'll send them $100.
So getting off Instagram makes people's lives better. That's what you're saying here now.
Yeah.
Is that just because of the envy that it creates? I will say I'm not really on Instagram, and every time I'm on for more than like 5 minutes, I'm like, what is going on over here? Because it's just like such this like curated.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't feel real. Like once you're out of it, it doesn't even feel real when you jump back in it, you know?
But that's because you've spent some time out of it.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
If you had never come out of it,
right.
we'd be doing this, and you would feel like it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
We are enough.
We are enough. So Nick, I think
too,
go ahead.
A couple other things. So one of your questions was about like what people could do. Like push your men out the door into going to playing sports somewhere or doing stuff with their guy friends or gal friends or whomever friends. Like, support them going out and doing things. Don't give your nephew a Wii Nintendo. Like, take them to the planetarium or help them join some kind of league. Like, get them started young doing something that is like socially enriching. It's hard to prove that 2 hours of hockey practice is better than sitting on the couch and playing video games. But if you do enough 2 hours of hockey practice, you will realize that that benefit feels better longer than playing video games or social media or something like that. But like, it's a hard thing, so it needs like, for lack of a better word, like coercion by the people around them, like help to remind them being out in the world with friends doing things is better than being in front of your technology.
So I have a question for you. So I know, like, there's an initial inertia, right, when you're used to being isolated, especially coming out of COVID. We were all pretty much conditioned to be
all crazy.
Isolated, yes.
Yeah.
And so to jump back into being social is not always the easiest thing. So, like, for me, I've moved around a lot. So when I move to a new community, like, I go check out the library. There's usually an alternative paper that has, like, events that are,
Cool.
you know, that kind of thing. But I know those are generally places that I can go and look for just things to do, to be around people that may be like me. How realistic is that for someone that maybe they didn't move to a new community, maybe they've just been isolated from their community for a while, and maybe sports isn't their thing, or something as, you know, easy as there's an activity I can sign up for that automatically comes with a socialization, right? Have you found that there is any unique difficulty or unique struggle with the population that you serve as far as just getting over that initial hump? Because I feel like once you're outside,
once you're outside, it's like, this is way better,
right? But like, just getting there. So as a person who consistently says I'm on my way, and baby, let me tell you, if I don't have to leave the house and put on pants,
if Ainsley's not coming, and my rule for Ainsley is if she's not there in the first 40 minutes, she's not coming.
But I mean,
what she said.
and I like Maria a lot, right? So like, I know my struggle, and it's not anywhere near, you know, what you're describing. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, how somebody gets there and how to help invite them out. Not even pull them out, but just invite them out.
Yeah.
Well, like, I think the impact of COVID has had a bigger lasting impact than we all realize. Like, it's kind of invisible. Like, it just happened, and then there wasn't any, like, it's still around. Like, people still get it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we still don't have a concrete idea of what happened and what was okay and what wasn't. You know, I prefer to listen to scientists, but society feels a different way about things. And I think we will continue to live with the impact on that. There's a lot of things I wanted to say from what you were saying. Let me see if I can get to some of them. But like, generally helping, like moving to a new town, like playing a sport is kind of a cheat code, especially if you're good, because people will want you to play. But like, what are you going to do when you're not good at sports, or you don't have, you can't find something? The town I live in now, when I moved to there's a Discord, and that Discord has a football, soccer channel, a hiking channel, a sunset channel, all these different things. And people can go on there and post they're going to go watch the sunset, they're going to play football at this time, they're going to play volleyball, there's a book club, there's a board game club. Like, I don't know if these exist in American cities or not, but this is kind of the board at the library that used to be there, you know? Like, I used to go to the library and find summer camps to go to. Like, I think that those comparable things are out there, but they're probably digital. And so I think that that's around, but there's poetry clubs for less active people, and writing clubs and other different interest meetups for people. also take a little risk and ask somebody at work to go have a coffee with you who you get along with a little bit and see how it goes. Like, I think that that's something I'm often doing with clients is like, you mentioned this guy, Jeff, that you work with and y'all get on well. Why don't you see about doing something with them? It kind of feels like hand holding, but many white men are kind of stuck in their 20s a little bit and need some help moving out of that, or younger.
When you say there's a lot of white men stuck in their 20s, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Like emotionally, like wanting things to go their way and not understanding why it can't and why it doesn't, and why the world doesn't. They were sold on it revolving around them, and it kind of feels that way, but it doesn't always, and it shouldn't. And like that's a hard sell to somebody that's been experiencing a lot of privilege their whole life to like give that up. But as you learn more about it, you realize your life is better. This is like patriarchy's whispering in the background of this, but like letting some of that go, your life will be a lot more enriching and you'll feel closer to people. I grew up close in a relationship with women and non-white people, and it was hard hearing about their lives and about the things that I said stupid around them, but ultimately we have closer, better relationships now because we went through that. We went through it together. And that's another big point of mine is like stay close to people. Like we're trying to be divided. We're trying to get pushed away from each other, and like I know it's hard, but stay close to who you can.
So I have a question about, like you mentioned, there may have been a time where you said something that was not the best, right? But being able to work in the context of your relationship to move past those things. So I know that there are a good amount of people that want to engage, right? And want to start having these conversations. And I mean, just as a society, as a digital society, we've built a horrible habit of if you don't get it perfect, you get lambasted, which I could see why that could be discouraging. So could you talk a little bit about like how or what I'll say you went through, what you experienced as you were pushing through, like, oh, I've said a thing that could cause some offense or a problem. I don't want to just disappear into the night and become a recluse, right? Like, how did you find your way to working through those scenarios to strengthen your relationships?
And I will add to that, what have you seen people do wrong in those circumstances? Like when that thing that could have been worked through ends a relationship or something,
Yeah. I actually have an interesting racial thing that happened to me that came to mind first, and then one that came to mind about my best friend who's of Asian Indian descent. And I'm trying to think about ones that specifically happened to me. Of course, there were countless. And
that's a great thing to admit. I mean, here is Nick,
I fuck up all the time.
Who's now our resident white guy, right?
Yeah.
And admitting that it's just an endless, and that doesn't preclude him from sitting in this space and having this conversation.
Right.
So thank you for your vulnerability, but please go on.
Yeah. I guess because I can't think of something specific that happened to me, me and my roommate and he was Indian American, went to a party in Cleveland, and where my friend's mom met a different friend's mom met him at the door and asked, hey, my friend, did you bring the naan? Good to have you here. Did you bring the naan? And like,
was it a potluck?
I was like, oh, like this is like really wrong.
Okay.
And we really missed that. And so I spoke with my friend after and said, hey man, that was really fucked up, and I'm sorry you had to experience that. And this was like 7 years ago, so I think some of my work is that it's stuck with me. Like I've let what was said stick with me. And I also told my friend whose mom it was what happened and asked her to speak with her mom about it. So like these kinds of ways where it's like the person with the most influence can have an impact on somebody. I also think generally saying things help, and a white guy or any person might push back, but they might come back to it later. Or if 12 people tell them the same thing, they might think, oh, me doing that thing that 12 people have told me is probably not the right thing. So like, don't not say it because in the short term you didn't get the win you wanted, or you don't feel like you got the win. Hope that the longer timeline and like more people saying it to them could have an impact.
Nick, so one thing we were talking about with the socialization piece too is you were saying like it's really helpful to get people in person, which is great. But we also know that people are being targeted like at gyms and like in person through these more organized
When you
pattern.
say targeted, what do you mean?
I mean that, for example, there was a recent write-up of a right-wing militia that essentially there was a guy who his job was to teach survivalist instinct classes. He taught people like how to survive in the woods. And then suddenly he was asked to train a white supremacist group how to survive in the woods. And he kind of realized that they were essentially like preparing for war. And he's like, oh, wow, you know. And so anyway, a lot of the things that he witnessed, he himself was progressive. So what he ended up doing, frankly, is pretending to be one of them for several years, getting a bunch of information and then releasing it, which is where we're at now with the story. But one thing that he wrote a lot about was how that recruitment strategy of, hey, you want to be able to survive in the woods and be a tough guy, and then suddenly it's Nazis. Like, you know, and like that sort of like toxic masculinity to
Just right there.
right there.
And
Like-
there's community there. If we're being honest,
And there's community.
There's
They're
a strong
offering
sense of
community. They're
yeah.
offering them an easy solution, community, someone to blame, grooming.
Yeah.
Like what? How do we prevent?
That's the grooming we should talk more about.
That is the grooming.
Another time.
So
yeah.
but like, you know, whether you're a mom or a 17-year-old boy yourself or whatever, like how do you, to the degree possible, identify when that might be what's happening? Like are there warning signs? Are there things that are kind of like red flags when you know, are talking to people who are building these relationships that are harmful ultimately?
I think that the internet is internet. Like, I'm sorry, I keep going back to the same thing, but like, I'm a curmudgeon about this. And like, people get radicalized on the internet, I think often. I think it's happened in several elections recently that people have really been skewed by YouTube algorithms and paths that brought people to radicalization. My like lame example of this is like I always played soccer, but I never watched it on TV. And then I was on YouTube, and then a clip would come up, and then another clip would come up, and then all of a sudden I like a certain team, and now I can't stop watching Real Madrid play twice a week. Like my content is kind of benign, but like that's what happens with these, like what y'all brought up. And how do you stop it? I think like talking about it so that people are aware this kinds of things can happen. I feel like with our parents' generation, it's even more dangerous because they didn't grow up on social media and like see what happened. I think younger people are probably less vulnerable to that, but I don't really know the statistics on it. But like, I'm plenty of white suburban parents, I'm sure, have been hooked into seeing somebody online that they followed that path down to something.
Andrew Tate has millions of subscribers.
Yeah.
When someone's down that path, it kind of reminds me of how you would deal with a like, I'm not saying that these are one for one, but how you would treat somebody with schizophrenia is you would try to have them talk out loud about what's going on for them and what they're seeing, and not go against what they're saying or go with what they're saying, but let them keep talking and hoping that they come to a conclusion hope that they see what's going on.
sometimes people are talking and they're like, oh, all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, like maybe I should do this thing, or maybe that thing's happening. Like, people need to talk enough. So if you notice that happening with somebody, going to talk to them and giving them space to talk about it and hoping that they come to a conclusion. And if after some time they haven't, then maybe you need to be more assertive and educational about what you're noticing.
Nick, I think what I like about that feedback is you didn't attempt to equate, like, just allowing them to think that they're right? Like, you're like, don't, affirm what they're saying. Don't necessarily deny what they're saying. Just let them say it all out loud and hopefully reach their own conclusion. And then if they don't, be more proactive. Like, I feel like there's this idea we either have to, like, tell people to shut up or immediately tell them you're wrong and here's all the reasons. And like what you're saying is basically almost the opposite is what we should be doing, allowing people to say what they believe and also not letting them get away with false premises once they've said what they believe.
Like saying at the end, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I hear you, or something like that.
Well, I
like,
guess I'm asking you that, right? Like, is that, how do you do, because
I kind of I'm thinking more about this group that you were mentioning. Like, this person goes and says, like, maybe they've been alone for 2 years, and then for a month they go train in the woods with a bunch of people, and they get hugs and time with other people and camaraderie, hugs, more hugs, and then, like, they get a random call from their cousin who's chewing them out about joining this group that it's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It has to be kind of like set up a little bit and them to come to the conclusion about what is happening. And I don't even know if what I'm proposing is going to work either, but it's just something to try, or something different.
We are desperate for solutions.
Yeah, we welcome all things. Nick, this is not on your question prep, but it's just kind of an off the cuff. I think you'll be fine with answering it. You don't live in Ohio anymore, but you still work with people from Ohio. You live in Europe, and can you tell us a little bit about what that vantage point looks like? Being a little bit more far removed, but still hearing about what's going on all the time. What can you see now with clarity from there that you couldn't maybe see when you were in the soup with the rest of us?
Or that is clearer.
Or is clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think both of you, like, in our prep for this, that while I live away, like, I speak for 25 hours a week with clients in America, in Ohio, so, like, the membrane is super thin and I still feel so much of what's going on. And I still feel like I don't totally have a good sense or a good touch or sense of what's going on the ground, and, like, I'm missing a lot of things. But I'm feeling enough from 3,000 miles away to, like, have this conversation. So the question was, what am I noticing from over here? The thing that's standing out to me is Europe is really concerned as well, and they're feeling it. If we're talking about, like, the political things, like, they're feeling it a lot too. America's been a big ally of Western Europe, a lot of Europe, for a long time, so that's a big difference. They feel other political powers knocking at other doors that they don't want to deal with without America. And so I think that's pretty scary for people here. I also think that, like, they get that we've been... I don't want this to be a really political show, but, like, hoodwinked or bamboozled a little bit by, like, who is leading our country now. And I think that they want to continue to be, like, sympathetic about what's going on for American people, and will be sympathetic through it with us. I'm hopeful of that, but that's what I'm kind of feeling now. And, like, Europe isn't without some of these problems, both with privileged people continuing to rule and not dealing with their problems, and with rising of right-wing parties that are gaining a lot of traction. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's exactly what was said. Something that really helps me, though, is that my nervous system is a lot more relaxed because I'm in a different physical place than a lot of what's going on. And so I know that's a really big privilege. Yeah.
I feel like I could honestly ask you a bajillion more questions, but I am positive that we've already gone too long. So anything else that you didn't get to say that you were kind of hoping we asked about or just didn't organically come up that you want to make sure is said?
We would love to have you back.
Or you can come back.
Choice is yours.
We can figure something out.
I love it.
I'm honored to
Look at us, engaging white guys.
I'm already related to him, but it's a start.
I'm not.
Yeah, so what else did you get to say?
Something I wanted to close with was, in the 1960s, Carl Jung sent a letter to Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, and Carl Jung was telling Wilson about a patient of his that had alcohol addiction, and for him to overcome it, he had to have a spiritual or some kind of experience bigger than the alcoholism to help him overcome his alcoholism. And it's kind of what I'm trying to promote, and a lot of what I'm saying is like, we need experiences bigger than hate, I guess, and addiction to social media and addiction to our phones and the problems that were started with patriarchy before we had social media. We just had gasoline poured on it with social media, and the manipulation machines of social media making them bigger than they were. But like, you know, we need some bigger spiritual experiences and like social connection kinds of things to win this thing that we're working on, or have some kind of progress. That's my best guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's totally right. I mean, I think that's what has made Christian nationalism so appealing too, is that it offers this community and this sense of self. So I think we do need to be thinking a lot harder about that.
And built-in community time at least once a week.
Yeah. All right, Nick.
Thank
we really
you.
appreciate you coming on and explaining white men to us. We learned a lot.
We have so many more questions.
We have so many more questions.
We'll save them, yes.
But,
my wheels are turning from this conversation. So I'm excited I'm excited to get to work on this.
Yeah, we'll bring you back and give you an update on how it's going over here, and you can give us more advice.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nick.
Thank you for taking the time, and we'll catch each other down the road, hopefully.
All right.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Well, thank you for listening to Ohioans Against Extremism podcast. If you want more, you can check us out at ohagainstextremism.org. Follow us on Twitter, No Extremism Ohio. And stay tuned, subscribe, and feel free to donate if your pockets allow it.